We are committed to creating a safe and supportive space for our guests and listeners, and to provide information and tools that will help our listeners understand, manage, and overcome trauma. We understand that the healing journey can bring up challenging emotions. Therefore, we want to warn our audience that certain episodes may contain discussions or stories that could be triggering for some individuals. The content of the podcast is for educational and informative purposes only, and we encourage you to practice self-care and discretion while listening, and to reach out to a trusted support system or professional if you feel overwhelmed and need help on your healing journey. Joleene, welcome. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I'm really excited.
I am too, and I appreciate this very, very much.
So I'm going to let you introduce yourself here in a minute. I just thought we'd kind of talk a little bit about what we're going to, kind of what our conversation is going to be. So you're living your growth journey on TikTok, and I love it. And I love the authenticity. I mean, it's just, that's how people connect, is when you're just real and raw, right?
Yeah.
And then you had mentioned a couple things that I thought were really interesting, and that was kind of recognizing what an awakening is, which I have a good idea of what that is, but I'll let you explain it. And then this one's really good as well, and that's the benefits of letting go of anger, because anger is like cancer, and it will eat you up, and it will affect every part of your life and everybody else's, right? So why don't you introduce yourself, and then let's have a conversation.
Awesome. So my name is Joleene DesRosiers. I'm living out loud on TikTok right now in my daytime life. The part that I'm in now, but will transition out of, is I'm a television producer for PBS. And this awakening that we're going to talk about has made, there's so many shifts happening. And I want to be able to relate to your audience how you have to pay attention to that and listen to that. So we will talk about, I'm sure, when I started getting these little blow up pops on TikTok, it was always the vulnerability of the awakening pieces. So I'm super excited to talk about that because I don't think it's something that's recognized. And if it wasn't for TikTok, I don't think I would have recognized it. People were coming in and telling me.
Yeah, I know. And people probably joke a lot about TikTok, but I've actually gotten a lot of, like, I call them golden nuggets.
Absolutely.
And I've gotten golden
Absolutely.
nuggets from your TikTok, videos. And it's, yeah, seriously, because the authenticity is what has us connect with one another, because I know for me, I can tend to be quiet and hold it in. And when I see someone else saying it, it's like, oh, somebody else feels that way, or somebody else is experiencing that. So interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's something that started, I would say, in February. What month is this? I
September,
want
end of September.
so funny. I think last year streams that were coming up through, but I just wrote them off as everyday normal shit life happening.
Mhm.
Yeah, this past February, I just kind of had this epiphany and realized I was living so much in a defensive, angry mode. And as a result, I was stuck in my masculine energy. And we can talk about that in case
Oh yeah.
anyone's not. But I was thinking that without even fully understanding what I thought I meant. So that tells me it's really coming from a source that's saying, you're so locked in your masculine energy. You can even see it in the way I move.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very strong masculine energy. But what I wanted to explore was more of my feminine. And I made this video and I said, this is what I'm going to do. And this is why I'm doing it. And they came in droves. And it was beautiful because it confirmed for me that what I wanted to experience was very real. And so many other people were already experiencing it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that was the beginning of me really having what I have been calling spiritual microbursts
Yeah.
or epiphanies and moments where how you viewed things before are now completely different.
Yes, I can so relate to that. And you're like, how did I miss that?
I know.
How did I miss that? How did I not see that before?
Because I was angry.
Yes.
So
You had a
one thing
veil of anger, right? Like a veil of anger almost, right?
I functioned, the way I thought life went is every response to everything was anger.
Mm-hmm.
Everything we met with anger. That was an epiphany I had probably about 4 weeks ago when I realized that's how I've been living is when somebody made me angry or a situation made me angry. The normal response of the world at large was to be mad,
Mm-hmm.
that anger onto the person, place, or thing. It was normal for me. And
Right.
that's truly how I functioned. And I didn't want to function in that space anymore. I just had this collapse. It's like this moment of clarity, absolute clarity that a behavior you functioned in for so long was no longer serving you.
Mm-hmm.
It was big. And so every time I had these moments of clarity, I'd hop on TikTok and I'd be like, so this happened, and then this happened. And more women were coming in going, yes, that's happening to me. And then they started asking me questions like, how do you know?
Mm-hmm.
How do you know you're having a spiritual awakening? Lisa, I didn't know. It was these women coming in, supporting my journey, saying, girl, you're waking up. You're waking.
Oh.
Yeah. And I'm
Oh.
and this started when I was 50, and I thought the generic canned version of what I was going through was the midlife crisis. That's
Mm-hmm.
old. That's gone. I was going through a midlife awakening, and I could resonate with that.
Mm. I like that. A midlife awakening. Holy cow, that's good. I'm writing that down. That is so good because that is so positive. Where
And
midlife
so
crisis has a negative tone to
that's
it.
not me. It was a follower of mine. Her name is Andrea Salervo, I think is how you say her last name. But she came in when she made this comment, and on TikTok you can take the comment and make a video. I
Yeah.
did, and I'm like, guys, we're not crashing here. We're waking up.
Oh, I love that. Holy cow, I love that. So the anger, do you know what the root of it is? Did you like, because I know for me, for my healing and even in my growth, it's understanding an emotion in me, right? And understanding where it came from so that I can then process it and work through it.
Yeah. I would agree. Yeah, it comes from so many different pockets in my past.
Mm-hmm.
Recognizing. So this is my belief I'm about to share. I'm not projecting it onto others to believe, but maybe if they hear it, they can relate to it. But
Right.
all these different pockets of anger, the situation with my family, being called names when I was young, being abused when I was young,
Mm-hmm.
walls, put me in defense mode. And I was always responding with anger, which is a wounded, toxic, masculine response.
Mm-hmm.
Pause here to just note to people, everybody in all of the land has both of these energies. And there's masculine and there's feminine, and there's masculine behaviors that are positive and feminine behaviors that are positive, and then there's also negative behaviors for each. The energy is how we respond to something in any given moment. When I'm in business mode, it's my masculine energy.
Right.
When I'm wanting to be with someone and sweet, I'm in my feminine.
Mm-hmm.
And learning that I can have both and how to fluctuate. And when they're wounded or when I'm angry, what I need to do to change that. So they kind of intertwine. But back to your question, it was all these different things. So I grew up responding very hard, very negatively, but at the same time defending people who were bullied because I was being bullied. You know, all of the things that everybody listening is like, "Yep, that's mine. Yep, that's
Yeah.
mine." So I also learned it from my father, and I think that's the biggest. Is I watched my father. He was he practiced rage,
Ooh.
out incredible rage, and I thought, and it's hard for people to believe this, but I thought that was normal.
No, I knew that was coming out of your mouth. And I think that, I can think back to my life too and my childhood abuse and like there's a little check in us that knows that something quite isn't right about it, but we're so young we don't know. And that does become our norm.
Yeah, and it did. And you know, I remember when I was in my 20s, I got in an argument with my best friend, and we were on my front lawn, and she's yelling at me, and I'm yelling at her. Maybe she wasn't yelling because she said to me, I'm not going to talk to you when you're angry like this. You're always so angry.
Oh,
And I was, no, this is how you do it.
right. Right.
This is normal. But even back then, that was like the first inkling that, and so I also used it as a tool. I manipulated people with my
Mm-hmm.
anger. I'm top dog. My response is what I want. All I thought about was me. So I was very stuck in ego and very stuck in anger. And again, I didn't realize how damaging it was, not just to other people, but to me. Like relationships blow up, and it wasn't like I was going through the world smashing buildings, but certainly there were things I didn't handle well, and relationships I didn't handle well because of my anger. And I had to get sober before I started seeing that. I haven't had a drink in 8 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I had to give up a lot of things and behaviors. And so I began to see that the journey of life is not about, this is my opinion, the journey of life is not about an accolade or a title. Or, we definitely have goals and things we want to do, but I don't care anymore about the things I used to care about. And that's another sign of awakening. You
Yeah.
don't care about the things that you used to care about, as in, I want to be the president of this company, and I want to have X amount of followers, and I want to be known all over the world. That dissipates. And what comes in place of it is a love and a compassion for all things. So angry people that I used to get angry back at, I now would be soft because I understood why they were angry.
Right. You can relate to that.
Yeah. And that it really had nothing to do. Please don't get me wrong. I still struggle with that. Like I still get triggered, which is a trigger is when someone says something and it resonates in your body and your subconscious picks it up from an old memory, and your brain doesn't know the difference between that moment and that action 7 years ago. And what
Yes.
happens, you respond. That respond is a trigger. And I was living my life triggered, just going through one trigger to another, and that's how it went. And the awakening portion is when you wake up. I say you wake up one day, it's just you literally just think, all my life I've been responding this way, and I don't want to anymore. I'm tired. And then I did another video where I was saying, I just want to be soft. I just want to put things down, and more women coming in. So I think I noted that not only was I experiencing something that can be quite beautiful, old people and patterns in my life were falling away, and new people were coming in, and there's no BS to that. There's no BS to that.
Yeah. I was going to tell you that I was sitting here thinking about my anger because I absolutely was constantly angry from my childhood. And I was like, what was the core for me, my anger? And the core was, I'm going to get you before you get me. I am going to get you, and I'm going to be on defense, and I'm going to watch you. And if you say or do something that sets me off, I'm going to get you first. And it wasn't that I was vicious. It wasn't an overtly vicious kind of thing. It was obviously a protective thing for me. And it was what I was raised with. And I had to constantly be on alert when I was little. So I took that into my adult life. And when I realized that, and I'm still working on that, there's a lot of areas of my life where that has gone away. But like you say, it still resurrects itself in certain places. But the benefit I have now, like you were saying, I love how you described the trigger. That was beautiful because it's so true. And the self-awareness is what causes me to go, oh, okay, there's that anger. And I recognize it because I don't live it every day, right? So I'm very sensitive to it. And I'm able to take a breath and then process and then react.
Yes. Yes. And that is a space that I still need great practice in. I had a situation where we were at a run, for example, a mud run. We're checking in, and there was a woman in front of us, and there were two people behind the table. One started to check us in, and the woman thought she was cut in line, and she became immediately defensive.
Oh,
And
yeah.
recognize her defense is mine. And in that moment, I very softly said to her, it's okay. The people thought we were all together and you were with us. We will gently step back. She didn't turn, she didn't respond. But for me to respond without telling her to,
Yeah. What the old response would have been.
yes, what my old response would have been, it was massive. And when I have that, it's almost like this warm feeling comes over me, because you know how they say way back from the 60s and 70s, it's all about love. They're not kidding.
They are right. If you spread the love, you may not see it at that moment, but it would be so interesting if you could have had a conversation with that lady and see how that comment affected her.
Yeah.
I mean, because for me, I lived my life in survival mode. So I had the anger, and then I had the strife, and I had the constant on, I was always on self-protective mode. And so because I was always so on alert, that it didn't take much to set me off,
Right.
because I
No.
was already close to there anyway, right? And then something would happen and I would hit the ceiling, right? And you're seeing what
Yeah,
she
you've
did.
already you're gonna tell them off. You're waiting to respond. You're listening to react. I get that.
Correct.
Yep.
Exactly. And I had a situation yesterday, because the place that I'm still working on my patience is when I'm driving. I'm a good driver, and I'm okay with someone making a mistake, but it's the ones that aren't real cool. And I was driving home yesterday, and I got angry at a driver, and I didn't like the way I felt. And I didn't
Yeah.
like what was going on in my head. And I reacted a little bit to them. I wasn't doing anything stupid, but I got home and I felt like crap.
Yep.
And I
I
thought,
can.
I wish I could just go tell that driver, you know what? I was just being a jerk. I'm sorry. I was just being a jerk. And it was just that flare up moment where someone kind of made me mad, and I just went ahead and reacted. And again, it wasn't something stupid or crazy, but it was something I'm not proud of. And I really struggled with that all day yesterday, and I felt bad. And I thought, you know what? I can't do that, because the cleanup afterwards is not worth that moment of release, or whatever you want to call that. It's just not worth it.
What a great way to phrase it, Lisa. The cleanup afterwards. You're right. You're right. And the more we have these moments, the more we remember the next time the moment comes. Like,
Right.
and funny, in this journey, I'll have a 2 or 3 week period where there could be bombs going off outside, and I'll be like, whatever happens, happens. It's all good. And I'm chill. But then something will shift, and it's kind of like an upheaval, and then I'm on guard. Like, as you and I are speaking right now, I'm actually in a very high anxious state because
Interesting.
of, yeah, because of different things going on around me. And it's a challenge because I'm looking back here going, oh, but just a few weeks ago, it was just so beautiful and nothing was wrong. And I thought I had arrived. But intentionally, the universe will remind you, you're close, babe.
Yeah.
But you got to work on this piece. Okay. And that's where I am. So um, it can be a real challenge. I don't think it's something that should be resisted. I think when you start embracing it, it really is, at the cost of sounding cliche, utterly beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Be able to look at somebody or look at a situation and reevaluate and know you're never going to be that other version of yourself. I loathe the old version of me. I
Mm-hmm.
understand that it was a part of me, and I can't hide it or stifle it. People saw it.
Yeah, I
It-
know. I do the same thing. I know. And I'm still working on the forgiving myself for my survival mode and what I did in my survival mode. I wasn't proud of it, because you'll do things in your survival mode that you wouldn't do outside of your survival mode,
yeah, for
you know?
sure.
And the one thing I was going to bring up too, and I shared this story the other day on podcast. I had this coach for just a minute, several years ago, and it wasn't a great experience. But there was one thing that he said one time that was really powerful for me. He said, you're looking at everything black and white. You need to start adding color. And it kind of took my breath away when he said that, because it resonated with me, but I didn't know what that meant. But I knew that that was really important. And I've been on that journey ever since. It's probably been about 8 or 9 years. And it has opened up my world, because I was very black and white about everything, and I was inflexible, and it was exhausting. And the thing that's cool about color is you can create colors. You can, it's endless in what you can do with it. And so that sounds like that's what you're doing in your life as well, is you're bringing in more color and more, you're opening up and expanding.
I'm allowing, I am accepting people, all of their personality, their quirks, their downfalls, their anger, and again, I'm not always good at it. I was triggered yesterday on the phone trying to work on something, set something up because the person's response was so triggered, not by me, whatever they came to the phone with.
Right.
And I responded the way I used to. Actually,
Mhm.
it's kind of like this in between. It's like there's still, I had to take several deep breaths and control my voice.
Mhm.
And so, you know what I mean? I don't think it's something that was magnified on either end for both of us, but I recognized it. Like, I don't know that she did. I recognized it. And thank God I did,
Mhm.
because no one would understand my angry response if they don't understand their own. Does that make sense? Like,
Correct.
yes. So I may come off as the offender because I'm triggered by them and they have no clue. That's where I was. I had no clue.
Mhm.
You know, if somebody used to say to me when I was very young, Joleene, I should tape record you. You should hear your responses to me. You're so crabby. And I was like, no, I'm not. Like, she, what are you talking about? This might be a teenager. But she was, so I have carried bags and bags of anger on my heart, my head, my body,
Your shoulders,
and
the weight of the world, right?
all of it. Yep.
So,
Yep.
so describe for us what it felt like when you used to be like that, right? When you used to live like that compared to what now. Now I know you say you still trigger, and I don't believe that for me, I don't believe like I'll ever fully heal, but I certainly have healed enough to the point that I can manage this. It doesn't manage me anymore. And that when I am triggered or I have a response, most of the time I'm able to manage it. So how do you feel inside? Like what's your thoughts? How do you feel? Like I know there's a physical difference, right?
Yeah. First of all, that was a great reframe, what you just offered. So that's really powerful.
Thank you.
Um, that it is like night and day. I often wonder if people from my past, if they saw me,
Hmm.
would remember if I my harder edges and their thoughts on it now. So and it wasn't immediate.
No,
It's
this is a
like
process.
total process
Hmm.
progression. Um, but I'm definitely, I've just made a choice. So people listening are going to be like, how did she get there?
Right.
And it was feeling the old ick that you're talking about. So maybe having that negative, angry response, seeing the person's face that I hurt, them not understanding, me taking it back with me, like you were just talking about, me having to deal with that and go through that. And all of it is so yucky. And I thought I wouldn't have to deal with any of this.
Hmm.
Responded softly or not at all, and just understood in that moment that human was probably going through something I would never understand. And you know, people say that like treat people well, you don't know what they're going through. Please, people, I beg of you, hear that because you don't. Like, you could be standing next to someone who just lost somebody or
Yeah.
is trying to process a moment of grief in the broad daylight with a smile on their face, looking completely normal, and they're dying inside. They're aching.
Yeah.
You're next to them, bitching at them about accidentally spilling coffee on your foot. Like, because we're so caught up in our head. When it's those moments when you realize you're not having them anymore. Instead, you're, because when the hard shell comes off, the exchange of energy is felt more.
Hmm.
So exchange of energy between you and someone else who may be having a moment is different because you're picking up on them responding to something that has nothing to do with you. And you recognize that. And that's super powerful. And even if they're triggering you and it's making you angry when you respond softly, I promise you, I guarantee you, after the exchange is over and they go to the left and you go to the right, both of you will go home later that night and sit down and have a moment thinking about that exchange and how you could have done it differently, and you will take something from it. And
Hmm.
then you will into the world the next day and you won't be as hard. And someone will do a kind gesture to you. Everything is energetic. Everything. And you actually have the power to shift somebody in a conversation, in a moment. You're not always going to be on your game, like you were saying. We're
Yeah.
human. But
Right.
every time you practice the other side of who you used to be, the bigger and better that other version comes out.
It's true. And and when you get away from that old self and you've lived in the new self for a while, and then you experience something in the old self, it's really intense and you really feel it. And I sit and I think, oh my gosh, I lived in every single moment of my life like that for years. And the other thing I wanted to bring up.
Sorry, when you have that realization, for me, they kept happening on weekends, which was super lucky because I had to be with those moments and nobody else was around. The last one I had happened on a Wednesday during work. And I was like, do with all of this emotion. And at the same time, there's love and gratitude and release, and nobody's going to understand it. You have to kind of hold yourself in the normalcy until you get home. And then just for me, there's a lot of release and crying, and then just resting and then breathing through it and allowing, what I'm talking about if you've had that experience. And if you've had these experiences, then you can finally chalk it up to say, is that what that was? Yes, that's absolutely what that was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 I get that. And then you want to share that. Sometimes you want to share that energy with people, right? It's exciting, or that aha moment.
Yeah.
One of the things, yeah, I totally get it. One of the things I was going to bring up, and this has been kind of a core belief for me and has really helped me because of my background and because I had the mindset that I'm going to get you before you get me. It made me real hard, right? And it triggered me a lot if somebody said something. And I think the moment that I began to see this was what you were just talking about, and that is, you never know what someone else is going through. And there's this great video on my website that gives a great example of that. I'll talk about that maybe in a minute. But the difference between what someone does and who they are, I call it, there's a difference between the who and the do. So here's a great example. You have a niece or a nephew or a child that you absolutely love unconditionally. You don't always love what they do, but when they do something wrong, you don't hate them. That love doesn't go away. You still love them. You just don't like their behavior, and you have a conversation with them. The old Lisa would merge that behavior into that person, and all of a sudden that person's a bad person. No, their behavior may be bad, but they're not a bad person, which gives me empathy and understanding. And you're actually describing it quite well when you're saying, I can have love for this person and I can care about him now. And I'll be angry, but you're not responding to that anger because you're separating who that person is from what they're doing.
And I'll take that one step further because I can resonate. You're not looking at what they're doing as a flaw and highlighting it.
There you go.
Infamous for that, Lisa. Infamous for, you did this wrong. Oh, I don't think
you checked all the boxes.
All this shit is wrong with you. This is all the stuff that and I would laser focus on the flaws and miss all the good. Do you know how many years I did that? And I am not proud of it. And I missed some really good, probably opportunities, friendships, relationships because of it, because I laser focused on their flaws.
And that's the stuff that I spend time forgiving myself for because of that mindset. And I don't spend the time like I used to on remembering all the things that I did, because that does not feel good, and spending my focus on going forward, because it's hard.
Yeah, it is hard. It's worth it. And when you have moments that you're tired, be tired, shut people out. You're not being rude. This is a reboot in your entire body. Imagine, like, all of this is all energy or chi, and it just goes through your body. And when negative people are around you, the negative energy comes in. When positive people, positive comes in. Energy is exhausting when you don't know how to move it. And we don't come with a manual. This is how you move energy. This is how you shift energy. And I now allow myself, when I'm tired, I sleep. If I'm going to go somewhere, and this is huge, if I'm going to go somewhere and I know it's going to be loud and there's going to be a lot of people, I get overstimulated.
Me too.
It's part of an anxiety thing. I make sure I have an out, an escape route, my own vehicle, everything, because I cannot anymore. It takes so much to hold that up. And I don't expect people to understand, but I'll do the thing. I'll do the glad handing, whatever. And sometimes, Lisa, it's great.
Yeah.
Zero problem being there, but I no longer will put myself in a position where something doesn't feel good. And I will no longer put myself in a place where I'm involving myself with people that rob me of my peace. It's not worth it to me. I won't
No.
even entertain at this point. I won't even
Right.
entertain.
Right. Right. I know. And, that's something that I recognized in myself too, is that I love being with people. I got to have my time by myself. I absolutely need that. And I used to commit to going to events or whatever. And at the time that I would commit, I really meant it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I want to do that. That sounds awesome. But as we would get closer, my anxiety, and I didn't realize that's what it was. And then because I didn't understand all this, I had real harsh judgment against myself. And I would end up canceling sometimes at the last minute, and I would feel horrible, but I literally could not get myself physically out the door to go do that thing. And then, of course, I would spend the evening feeling bad about myself because here you committed to this thing and now you've backed out, and you backed out last minute on top of that, you know? And there was also this mindset, and I'm going to talk about this in another podcast of mine, but that I didn't believe that people would even really care if I wasn't there because they didn't like me. So why would I even care? Like, they're not going to miss me, right? It couldn't have been more wrong, but like you said, sometimes I would go to these events and I'd have a great time. I'm like, oh, if all of them were like this. But the majority of them, my anxiety was so high that I walked into that event with high anxiety, things going off in my head, and it wasn't a success. And all I could do is think about, I need to go. I need to get out of here. And I know I didn't leave a good impression.
Yeah. Yeah. Understood. Completely.
Totally.
Yep.
So now I really think about stuff, and the commitments I make, I stick to, and it feels better. But I also know not to judge myself. Now that I understand myself, and now that I understand all this, I set myself up for success, which is exactly what you were just describing for yourself. You're setting yourself up for success. Pay attention to how you feel about stuff. And those of us that have anxiety, everybody needs to have self-care. Those of us that have anxiety have to kind of sometimes go a little step further. And we really have to pay attention to what we're doing, what we're thinking, what we're saying, who we're hanging out with, what we're hearing. All of that is important.
Very much so. And it's okay to have it. It's okay to be off center. It's so okay. I mean,
It is.
I was brutalizing myself because I was unhappy with something or angry about something or not responding in a delicate, proper way. And I, I am who I am. I'm always going to be a work in progress. Every single one of us are.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, how did you treat people?
Right. Did you leave them feeling better about themselves than when you walked up?
Yeah, you know?
So tell me, what do you do? Like, let's say a situation happens right now that creates anger in you. What are the steps? What do you do?
If I'll be honest, if I'm in a good headspace, it's a no-brainer.
Right.
If
Good
I'm
point.
in a Yep, if I'm in a good headspace, I will be non-reactive because I literally understand it doesn't have to do with me and I'm soft. And so the practice is when you're taken by surprise.
Yeah,
How do
that's the one, caught off guard. Yeah. And there's certain things, let me say this real quick. There's certain things too that will send me still. And that's if there's an injustice,
you
you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. So to that, it all, I think of the Mel Robbins, the deep breath, and you were just talking about it.
Yeah.
Deep breath. I am learning to not respond and ask to come back to it or to completely walk away. I was selling my daughter's car, and this one man came with his family to look at the vehicle, and I expect this, he's inspecting it completely. He should, right?
Mhm.
Looking, the car runs great, everything's beautiful. I also know he comes from a culture where he's not American. So the way that women are treated are much different. And I had this in my head when he was looking at the car.
Yep.
But I'll be darned, from the beginning with him talking to me, he didn't think I knew anything, right? So he'd be like, "Can you tell me what the VIN number is?" Because he wanted to do like a fax report. And before I could respond, he said, "It's on your registration in the top right corner." Okay.
I know right where you're going with this.
I know right where. I know cars.
No, exactly. It's like, oh, okay. And then he asked me another question about if there's a lien on it. Now I know if there's a lien on it because I bought the car. Bought the car with cash. I know there's not a lien on it. And we're on Messenger, and he messages, it'll go look for your title. It'll be on your title. And I'm like, I can't do this with this guy. I can't do it. I cannot do this transaction. I actually was snarky and I said, I'm aware of where all these things are. And then I blocked him. I just blocked him. His wife comes back the next day messaging saying, my husband may have offended you. My apologies. It was not his intention. We're really interested in the car. And so I had one of those moments we were just talking about, like, oh no, I overdid it. I overreacted.
And I have had so
But
many of those.
I know. I'm like, just be soft, just be chill, allow. So I'm like, great, you can come look at the car. I'm just going to allow. So he's with his father. They're not speaking English. It's fine. He's walking around the car. He opens the hood of the car and he points to something. He says, this doesn't look right. There should be it's the serpentine belt. It should be around this or cog. And I'm looking and I don't know, right? But you know how there's intuition? My intuition literally said this. I love this story. The reason it's not around that particular cog is because this is a standard engine. And when they put on the bells and whistles, that cog may be used for something else. Or you know what I'm saying? There's like, and it's because my car is the most basic economy car. But I didn't say that because I'm a woman. And what do I know? Because what do I know? So he's literally telling me, he's like, I'm going to have to call a mechanic, buddy. And I say to him, the serpentine belt is very taut around all cogs. I don't think that's related. And he goes, I'm aware. And he got triggered by it. I had to walk away. Now, this car was parked at a friend's house, a coworker who's a man. And he saw me come around the corner. He's like, are you good? I'm like, I got it. I'm good. Because I didn't want to respond.
Yes.
So I had, long story short, he didn't end up buying the car. A young lady showed up the next day with her boyfriend, took it for a test drive. It was the perfect exchange. She bargained with me. She should have. I said yes, took the money. Here's the title. You have a nice day. She has a great car. But the moral of the story is my antennas were up originally and I should have left that out to keep the peace. I didn't trust my gut, but I was still triggered by that and I had to walk away. I don't even know if I answered your question. I just told you a story.
You did. No, it's great. And you brought up a really good point. You and I are so much alike. It's frightening because I can completely follow where you were going. I was one step ahead of you. And the one thing that I'm learning not to do is to go into stuff with preconceived ideas or expectations, because I totally do that all the time. And I totally would have done that too. I would have listened to him and go, okay, he's from a country where they don't really respect women. And I'm going to go into this with the idea that he's not going to respect me. And that's not fair. That's not fair to him. And it's not a good way to go into but that's totally what I would do. Totally. I would have done every step that you did is what I would have done. I was annoyed that you're telling me where the stuff is. I know cars, dude.
Yeah, that's a challenge for women in general, I think, because there's still, this is my belief, nobody else's, there's still a level of patriarchy that we're working through that I never saw before.
Right.
And I see now, and I'm trying to handle it with grace. And I'm learning how to respond to it in my feminine, which is softer, but still responding in a way where you're trying to shine a light to be like, that's not how it goes, dude.
You're just taking the more masculine words and putting a little filter of feminine in front of it so that it's presented easier.
Well, yes, but there's also more power behind the feminine.
True.
And I think a lot of people, and that's still work that I'm learning, is when you respond softly, I always say you gotta Morgan Freeman it.
Yeah.
Freeman's response to things is just to kind of watch it unfold. When you can release your ego and understand you don't need to respond and just watch and say, okay, let them fail. There's a lot of power in that. Who cares what they think? Who cares if they think they've got one over on you? Let them. Let them. I'm watching this way in real life with men in my life, and I'm just going to let them.
Right. And there's so much freedom in that too.
Yeah.
There's so much when you don't have to prove yourself or explain yourself all the time. Like when I realized that I don't have to explain myself all the time, that I don't have to defend myself all the time, that I can own my own stuff and I don't have to explain it. There's so much freedom in that. And that goes kind of, for me, in line with my people pleasing issues I had so much of, but there's so much freedom in that. And sometimes you just don't need to respond.
It's true.
And it is all in the delivery of the message, right? It's how you deliver the message.
And angry me was like, no, there's only one way, the FU way,
Right.
the defensive way. And I'm still practicing that to respond softer. And softer doesn't mean okay.
Right.
Softer, you're in check with your divine feminine energy, and like that it's their stuff. And if they want to project it, you have enough strength to bounce it right back, and they don't even know what's happening.
Right.
But when you look unaffected, that says more than responding defensively.
Absolutely. And can change things, because if you respond in the old way, it's going to go one direction and it's not going to be good. But if you use the feminine energy and you soften that response, it's amazing what can end up actually happening. It can be quite magical. Because it's how that lands on that person. I've said for a long time, I've said this before on my podcast and I'm not proud of it, but in my first marriage, I used to joke that I could shred my husband with my tongue. I could be brutal, and it was ugly. And I am so not that person. And I'll tell you the difference between the way I feel, because when that energy does come up in me, and fortunately it's not very often, it's one of those times that I just want to crawl out of my own skin and get away from myself, because it does not feel good. It is not peaceful. It is not calm. It's not, it actually sometimes can make me sick.
You and I are alike, because the way I was in my first marriage and my responses, I was not kind, and I am sick thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's an area to work. He has
Yeah.
forgiven me. He's such a kind man. But I have not yet forgiven myself, because nobody deserves that. And so that's still a work in progress. Again, the awareness there. How can I personally work through it, understanding that he has forgiven me because he's so good? It's okay to forgive myself and just know moving forward, it just doesn't feel good to treat people that way.
No, and you don't do that anymore. You are spreading more love and kindness and empathy. What's that?
I'm trying.
You are. And you know what? And you're a human being. I mean, we're going to make mistakes. And that's the thing too, is like yesterday, I did spend on and off most of the evening thinking about my behavior. It bothered me that much. And I would stop and I'd say, okay, Lisa, and I'd forgive myself, but then it would resurrect itself. And I finally thought, you know what? I have worked through that. I have mourned it. I have apologized about it. I need to let it go. And that's where, because I tend to overthink, that this stuff can resonate in my head and just go on and on and on. And then I could spend days beating myself up over it. And I've had to learn to not do that and take it down to this level of processing it, forgiving myself. And then when it pops back in my head, I got to let it go. And with my ex-husband, I mean, I apologized to him. I even apologized to my son recently, because, and I hope he's okay with me sharing this. But I told him, I said, honey, you were raised in a home of screamers. You were raised in a home where your dad and I yelled at each other. And I am so sorry. It really, when it hit me, when I realized that, I spent a couple of days mourning that. I just felt horrible. And this was a few months ago when I saw him, and bless his heart, I have such a sweet son, and he, reached over and he's trying to, comfort me, because I was in tears, because I was pouring my heart out to him. And I said, honey, this isn't for you to make me feel better. You've done that all your life. You need to take this in. This is for you, and, he's so sweet. He's like, Mom, you did the best you could. And you did a really good job in so many areas. And I love that about him. But I'll tell you, it was not a pleasant sight. And I have fully apologized to my ex, and we've moved on, and it's good. I still sometimes think about it and just cringe when I think about, because I didn't hold back.
Right. Well, we've hashed out a lot on this episode.
I know. We could do this again. I know, because there's more stuff. Yeah, I'd love to have you back, because you and I knew it. I knew it too. And I was listening to you on TikTok and watching. I'm like, oh boy, she's got a mindset like me. Oh boy, I bet we would hit it off, and I knew that we would connect. It's awesome.
I'd love to give my handle for any followers and
Yes. Yeah, I was going to say, so why don't you tell us if anybody wanted to reach out to you? Because you are working on getting back into coaching, correct?
I think so. Yeah, I've got a couple of clients now, and the coaching I do is like, I call it midlife mindset coaching. I'm still building, but I work so well in conversation with people to shift their mindset to get them to these spaces. So I think this winter I'll be rebuilding a new website. My current website is all focused on my writing. I'm a screenwriter, but I'd love a follow on TikTok, and it's Joleene, JOLEEN like Nancy E_D. And I mean, you could just type in Joleene and my name would come up, but join the journey with me, because we can't do this alone.
Right, right. Yeah, it's really powerful. Your videos are really powerful, and you really are raw and authentic. And I think that's why, when we're vulnerable and we're just real, people can connect. I can't connect to somebody who's perfect, who thinks that their life is just perfect. I can't relate to that, because I'm not there and I won't be here. So yeah, I mean, definitely follow Joleene, watch those, and interact, because I think that it's really powerful and helpful. So, and all your contact information, of course, will be on here so that people can reach out to you as well. But yeah, definitely watch the videos. They're great. The earring one was really interesting.
Oh, I don't have them in today. I'm like, do I have them in today? No.
Nope.
Now people will have a reason to follow me. They'll go discover what that story is.
Yeah. Yeah. Follow. Yeah. So when you go to her TikTok, look at the one about the earring. It was really powerful, because actually I cried when I watched that. That was really powerful. Well, thank you so much for being here. I would definitely love to have you as a guest again. And who knows what else we'll talk about.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I appreciate it.